Okay. So typically I jump right into this, but I do want to provide the audience with a little bit of context. So can you both share kind of the path, in 5 minutes or less that led you both to Chado?
Yeah. So Chado is a family business. It was founded by our parents, Devin and Rena Shah, in 1990, or early 90s. I was born in 92. Bianca was born in 93. So they
That
kind
doesn't
of
make me like
established
you
this.
anymore. I was born
Yeah.
in 1979, the 70s.
Yeah. But yeah, no. So our parents they worked really hard for the business. They started with one shop on Third Street in La Cienega, in like right next to Beverly Hills, and they grew that into what became five different restaurants, afternoon tea shops all over the LA area. One of the things that our parents are known for is their influence on the tea industry, and that's kind of what has gotten Chado to where it is today. Is we've helped establish the specialty tea culture here in the U.S. Over the last 30 years, and our journey, and maybe I'll have Bianca talk a little bit about how we got involved.
Sure. Okay, so how we got involved was, well, obviously we were little tykes when our parents first purchased Chado and acquired it, and I can go back to when I was 12 years old, and this one summer where I think all of the employees quit at our Third Street location, and my mom said, "You're here, I'm here, we're gonna go," and me and her ran the store that summer. And I was 12 years old. This is like labor laws. I don't know if we should talk about that, but when it's your family's business, right? You do it, and and then that was my first year of like actually working in the tea room, and I loved it. And when I was 16, I went in to manage the store one summer, and I'm sorry, I want to jump back to that story of the summer that I was 12 years old, and this is such a family business. Brendan came in one day as a busser, bussing the tables, the dishwasher. My grandma came in; she was making the tea. My mom was the cook, and I was the waitress outside. And that's how much of a family business this is. And meanwhile, I'm calling my dad, asking him questions about tea. I'm getting questions about tea. I'm 12. I don't know. So I'm calling him like, "Hey, Dad, what is this about green teas and black teas?" And it was a mess, but it was our mess. It was a fun chaos. Looking back, obviously. So I think that's been
Yeah,
our journey to it. But yeah, go ahead, Brendan.
yeah. And I, on the other side, I was we've been selling tea online since like the early 2000s. So I was during that same summer, I was packing teas and sending them out to customers. More recently, though, our father passed in 2016, and one of the things that we had to do was step into his wholesale business. Was a wholesale tea business, which supported the tea rooms as well. So one of the benefits of having the two companies that we did was that we would support the tea industry with the specialty tea wholesale business, and then Chado would be kind of like our playground to try and to figure out what customers want in the different types of teas that they want. And we found that there's like this really big niche for afternoon tea, which has only been growing since we started Chado 36 years ago.
And so your dad passed, and I think like a lot of family businesses, the lore is in doing research that most of the business just lived in his head.
Yeah.
um I
Yes.
think for a lot of independent business owners, the struggle is really, you know are you a business owner, or are you the manager of a business that you happen to have equity in, right? How many of us are working on our business versus working in our business? And so, you know you had an opportunity when he passed, to take the torch. And by that, I mean, like, not just run the family business, but run the family business in the same way that he ran the family business. Right? Where it's, you ingrain these systems, they're all dependent on you, they all live inside your head, and you have two of you, right? So you two could just do it together in that way, and it would be half the work because it all lived in his head. Now it lives collectively in your heads, and you could move forward. But you didn't. you decided to attack it using first principles. What would this business look like if it was, for lack of a better word, professionalized? And so, I love my parents deeply in the same way that I'm sure you do. And I'm fortunate enough that both of my parents are still alive. If my father passed, I would be devastated. Business would be the last thing on my mind, but it's also the thing that supports your family. And so, in the midst of that grief and still needing to run this business, what was the approach? What was the conversation that you guys had around this is what the next evolution looks like? Is another evolution even warranted? What was your approach to becoming business owners?
So I think a lot of our time in the beginning was spent just learning the business, because like you just said, it was all of it lived in his head. He was the owner of the company. He built it from the ground up, but he was essentially a manager of 50 employees. And he was in charge of every little part of it. As I'll go so far as to say, we didn't even have an inventory system. We had a 50,000 square foot warehouse with no inventory system. It was all in his head. So that was one of the first things that we were like, well, we need to tackle this. What do we do? Just at least put it into an Excel sheet. And we had to take down every single pallet, hundreds of pallets of teas. And some of them were mixed with teas from different countries and different weights. And that was really just the first step of us doing that. But for the I'd say first few years, it was just a matter of learning how to source the tea, how to do the purchasing, how to understand the blending, how to understand just the way that the system worked, and trying to figure out why it was the way that it was, because a lot of it just didn't make sense. Even though it made sense to him, it took us a long time to figure it out.
Did your time at Amazon help, Brendan?
Yeah, it did a little bit. One of the things that I did work on at Amazon was sort of like data integration type stuff. So that did help a lot. It helped us like create a model for, okay, well, this is how we should describe the tea in our inventory management system. I think, it helped less than I hoped it would, maybe, but it definitely did help. Yeah.
Right.
We did end up doing it.
That would be my question, though, right? It's, especially when starting out and taking the helm, I talked to so many operators. I literally just got off a call, and, and they've got all these plans, all these things they want to do. But from my perspective, all they're really doing is like cleaning the windshield on a car that's driving off a cliff, right? It's right, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. I think that, when you're in a business, I think the easiest thing to affect is operations. Right now, is that going to have a positive impact on top line or bottom line? Right, the two things that really impact. I think it's really kind of hard to tell. And I think that these businesses, they're all like problem factories. Right, it's just whack-a-mole. And so, like, if you guys spend all of your time attacking organizational and infrastructural issues, that's all you would ever do. And the business might not grow. It just might become incrementally more efficient. And so I would ask, how did you triage? How did you know that the thing that you were working on was going to positively impact either top line or bottom line? Or did you not even think in those terms?
I think one of the things that happened was that, like, as much as we wanted to focus on top line growth, it was one of those things where we just didn't have the visibility if we weren't doing the things in operations that we needed to do. So when we were tackling those operational issues, I think the main reason we were doing it was so that we could actually get a sense of how the business was doing, a real sense of how the business was doing. What we found was, like, the different types of issues that we found were the most important to attack first were like quality issues. So for example, the wholesale part of the business, we had basically, you could order any tea from us in any amount and like swap out any of the ingredients that you want, right? Which was a lot of load on the actual manufacturing team. So what we had to do was, okay, well, from the ground up, what does our manufacturing look like? And yeah, we had to take away a little bit of freedom from our customers, but it led to a much more consistent product and ultimately allowed us to fulfill more orders, right? Those were the types of issues that we saw happen. And when we were able to standardize, yeah, it made a few customers a little unhappy, but it was able to allow us to service more customers. And that's kind of the effect, or that's the approach that we took, was what are the operational issues that are going to allow us to serve, like, deliver the same product to more people or more often. And I think that same thing has followed through to the tea rooms as well. Has been one of the things that we're working on is, having a menu of 200 teas. That's a lot of stuff for a consumer to sit down and like read through, right? So, and it's also a lot for a staff to learn. So one of the things that we're trying to do right now is trying to focus our catalog down to a set number of teas that's like, a little bit more interesting to talk about. Each tea is a little bit more interesting to talk about, and it's significantly easier to train the staff as well as get a consumer to make a decision.
Did you guys read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins by chance?
Yeah, we have.
Well, then let's get weird. Okay, so when I think about my own business, when I think about my restaurant group, when I think about your business, what I think about is I think about the Jim Collins-esque flywheel, right? That I do this thing to serve this thing to serve this thing. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if I focus on any one of these 3 or 4 things, right, they're powering the flywheel, it spins faster. And so one of the issues, and I think one of the reasons that most independent restaurants are so fragile, is they only make money one way. It's this classic strategy of, right, we're going to open the doors, people are going to come in, hopefully they don't stay too long, and they tell their friends what a great experience they had, and they come back all the time. And like that is like the independent restaurant strategy. But you look at the wholesale side of your business, and I think it's interesting in the same way I think like hosting private events and fine dining is interesting, or corporate catering and fast casual is interesting. That it is this thing that you can control. You can't really control how many people are going to come in for tea this Tuesday, right? But you can control how much you sell wholesale through developing like one of these Jim Collins-esque flywheels. And so when you looked at the business and you guys had visibility into both sides, not really how well it was working, it would seem, but that it was working. How did you triage which one to work on first? And did you build out almost a flywheel? Are you able to explain how these businesses work collaboratively to grow the overall success of the company?
Yeah. So our flywheel looks very it's interesting, right? We do lots of private events. So like our biggest thing that happens in store are like bridal showers and Mother's Day. I think we get 10% of our annual sales just on Mother's Day weekend. So, it's a very like events driven type of business. And obviously, not many people are going to have afternoon tea on a Tuesday afternoon, but we can control some of the things where like identifying the brand with like celebration. That's something that we're trying to do a little bit more of. But on top of that, right, like we sell tea online, and the goal is, okay, well, if you buy the tea online, you'll taste it and you'll continue to buy tea online. And then when you come to LA, we'll sell limited edition teas in store. So you have to come to the store to enjoy it, or we'll give you, a gift card to go to the store when you come, when you visit. Same thing with private events, right? If we do a private event for somebody, we'll work with them to make a little custom blend, or we'll rename one of our blends and put, we've done this multiple times for like people who do wedding favors. I have multiple friends who do wedding favors. So kind of building customer loyalty is the basis of the whole brand. I think if we look at our numbers, most of our customers, it was like 70 to 80% of our customers are repeat customers. So trying to reward them for being part of the company is something that we focus on quite a bit. And I think that that's where our flywheel is focused. It's like, how do we make this feel like a community? Tea is a really community focused beverage, and leaning into that, I think, is how our flywheel works. When it comes to wholesale, I mentioned before that one of the benefits of having a retail business is that it informs like what consumer trends are happening. And we take that information and then we use that to sell to other businesses and say, hey, this is what's popular in LA, one of the most popular markets in the country. You should also be doing this.
I want to talk about brand. because I think it's really interesting. Like, you sell your tea to your competitors. You do.
Yes,
And so,
we
right,
do.
in an industry where like everybody holds everything close to the vest, you take your core differentiator and you willingly sell it to your competitors, right? There is somebody 10 miles down the road that could just as easily sell your tea to their customers. And it's because you've built brand. The people come to you because you are an arbiter of taste, which everybody listening can say, "Oh, that sounds cool. I want to do that too." But it's not easy to do, and it requires a lot of intention from the outset. You are not purveyors of tea. You are ambassadors of culture. And the vehicle you use is tea, which is beautiful. And I think we could just stop the show now and everybody would walk away and say, "Oh, that sounds good. All right, pour me a glass of that shit." But the question is, how do you do it? And so your father, I think, through intention, had started you on that path. But his efforts predated the internet, and social media and AI and all of these things that we're contending with today. And so when you two took the helm, how did you take that mantle to grow deeper into becoming arbiters of taste, so that the moat isn't the tea, the moat is the brand?
So I want to address the taking our tea and selling it to to our competitors, essentially, right? Um, when my parents first started, our parents first started, my dad came to America and was just like, "There's no tea culture in America, and that's what I want to create." And that's essentially what he did, right? So he would make a tea. We knew he used Chado as, like Brendan had said, I think, to get feedback from customers, what they like, what they don't like, and then he would use that to sell to his essentially his competitors. The focus was never really on Chado to grow. The focus was on Chado to just be a place that we could talk to customers. And he built the tea industry by selling those same teas to our competitors. Now, have we kind of adjusted that mindset? Like, yes, I think we have. We've got people drinking tea now. Now I think we need to focus on us.
Sure.
So I think we are kind of making those sorts of changes, and like you said, leaning much more heavily into the brand. And what do we want Chado to be, is like, what lasting impact do we want to have with Chado? And I think it's just being much more intentional, having much more intention with the teas that we choose, how we source them, and the sustainability of the brand. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, Brendan.
Yeah, no. One of the things, like one of the, I say, pillars of the brand is, while we are changing the strategy a little bit in terms of who we sell tea to and why we're selling tea, I think the support of the tea industry is always going to be part of who and what the brand is. We work with UC Davis on their establishment of like a tea education program at the university level. We just recently invested in a farmer-owned factory at Origin, because one of the things that we've noticed in the tea industry is that, like, we get a lot of, like, we've lived very fortunate lives because of the work that these people do on gardens, and we need to invest in making that more sustainable at Origin. So our goal, especially when it comes to tea, has always been like, how do you support the community in general? And that's part of the Chado brand. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to mean that we are competitors with the people that we sell to sometimes, but ultimately, I think they understand that what we're doing is in service of the tea industry at large. Now, Chado's brand, I think, benefits from the fact that we're not just a tea company, right? We are a place where you can sit down and, most of our customers are women. It's like a place where women can get together and just gossip with their friends. And the tea is sort of just in the background. It's like an accessory to your afternoon. And one of the, like, I focus a lot on the tea, and I think it's particularly important. But at the end of the day, when you're drinking tea with your girlfriends, it's not the tea that you're going to remember. It's going to be the conversation that you remember. And that's something that we think is really central to the Chado brand, is like, how do we turn this communal drink that's been communal for thousands of years into a place where you can just enjoy yourself with your friends and family.
Yeah, one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you guys is because there are things that you do and there are ways that you operate that go expressly against like the way I operated as a restaurant operator. And so like I'm curious about these things. One of them you referenced earlier, and I want to dig a little deeper into it. So from a marketer's perspective, which I think even as a restaurateur, I've probably always been mostly a marketer. What is that? Is that
Is that
sawing?
me? I'm so sorry. There's
You're
something
good.
happening
You're
outside
good.
my window.
No,
and
you're totally good. You're
I couldn't
totally
tell
good.
if you could hear it or not.
I just need to know if you're okay.
Yes, I was looking outside to see what the heck is going on.
Right.
And I can't
Brendan,
see
was it just me, or were you expecting
No,
to see
I
a
heard
man
it.
You can
with
hear
a
it?
saw?
Okay.
It
I
sounds like
thought
a saw.
It sounded like there was going to be a man with a saw like creeping behind you, and I was going to be like, Bianca, for the love of God, turn around.
Oh my God.
No, you are.
No, let me mute
golden.
myself though, unless
You
I'm
don't even
talking.
need to because
No? Okay.
we're all on separate channels. So like
Okay.
it's not going to pick up the audio unless it happens while you're talking. I just
Okay.
needed to know that you were okay.
I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm safe.
So for me, one of the things that I've always tried to solve for, maybe not always, but it's decision fatigue. I think that is ultimately what prevents people from doing business with us or coming back to do business with us again. Personally, I think Cheesecake Factory has an amazing business. Do I enjoy eating there? Not particularly. And when I go, I always order the same thing, which is the thing that I ordered the first time I went and wasn't disgusted by. Because I don't want to make decisions. I don't think anyone, like nobody's like, man, I hope I get to make more decisions today. And then, Brendan, you were talking about this earlier, but like you carry over 300 teas. That's a lot. It's so
is,
many teas. And I don't know how you train on that, but I'm curious to know how you have trained on that, how you saw that is like an asset, and why you're adjusting the strategy now and what you're hoping to get from it. Because, dude, you are not like the only person on the planet that has a big menu that's looking to pare down,
Yeah. I think, before, the way that we used to train, we used to have, people at the wholesale company would have to go and work at the tea rooms, and like they'd spend their weekends on our busiest days talking to customers and stuff like that. And that's a really effective way to get our wholesale people to learn about the teas. Now, the other way is just like if you have somebody in staff on like in the stores, how do you get them to train? And it's hard, right? That not only is there so much, tea is so specific. Like it's a very specific kind of person who can taste the differences between tea. Like I remember when I was trying, when I'm doing buying, I'm tasting the same tea from the same handful of gardens. I'm like, I have to taste where the elevation differences are. Right? Like there's only a few people in the world who can do that type of thing, who've been trained to do that type of thing. And it would be ridiculous to assume that we could train people to do that, but also to assume that you would even need to know that kind of, have that kind of skill to work in a tea room setting. So we've always kind of had this is the teas that you should recommend type of program. And then like, if there's more depth that a customer wants, they can look into our big book and see all of the different teas that we offer. Now, with changing our catalog, I think one of the reasons we want to do it is, like you mentioned, like decision fatigue has become part of the world, right? It seems like every time you do anything, you're bombarded by so many decisions that you have to make. And for us, what we found is that, people like our customers are overwhelmingly buying 25 teas, right?
Yes, for sure.
and while those are important to preserve, we really don't need to focus on much more than that. So what we've tried to do is put a little bit more intention into the way that we are sourcing the product and like crafting the product. it makes the story much more interesting for both the consumer to learn, but especially for our employees to learn and be trained on, right? If instead of, hey, here's a list of 300 teas that you have to learn, what if the training program is, hey, this is a list of 25 ingredients and the farmers that we buy all of these things from. And these are the ways that we put them together in our tea catalog. So for example, the factory that we I just talked about that we invested in, a farmer-owned factory. They just had their first production at the end of last year, and that tea is going to be arriving in August of this year. And we're really excited because what we're doing is we're just changing our base black tea to the tea that these farmers are growing, and that accomplishes two things, right? Is it makes the catalog a little bit simpler. We don't have to have you trained on all of the different black teas that we're using as bases. You just need to know the one that we're using. And it's a very compelling story to talk about because it's something that we worked on. We put our own money up for to help these farmers and to build this factory. And it's actually working for them. And we're using it to like affect real supply chain change. So like this, the way that we're approaching this is like rather than having 200 surface level or 300 surface level teas, what if we have a list of like 90 really in-depth teas that like there's this, it's the Wikipedia effect, right? Like we want to have a Wikipedia for our catalog, and the more that you can get somebody to click into it, the more involved and like in love with the brand they'll feel.
Well, I think what you're talking about is so, my perspective is this. I think that what a perfect menu looks like is you open it up, it's one page with only one item, and it's exactly what you wanted. Right. Like that is, and I think that's what we're all working towards, right? Like when we talk about menu design and menu engineering, it's all about like steering people towards the thing that they're going to enjoy the most. But it's really hard to do. And it requires a lot of iteration to get there. And so I'm curious to know what how often you're printing menus, how often you're willingly changing the menu, because I would assume that you're probably still only about 200 to 300 versions of the menu away from a perfect menu.
That's all.
For sure.
No, I would say that when it comes to our food menu, we've had a core menu that we've had since the very beginning.
Yes.
We have like I think about 6 sandwiches that have stayed consistently on our menu. They're very classic tea room items. But when it comes to all of the other things, also our scones have stayed pretty much the same over the years. Our cream and things like the pastries and the cookies and things like that. Those are things that we are actively changing. And obviously we take feedback from wherever we can get it and from whoever we can get it from, just to, bring that from 200 to 300 iterations down to maybe, 150 until we get the perfect menu. Yeah. Sorry.
And one of the things that we've been doing more so recently in the last couple of years has been these themed afternoon teas. So earlier this year, the Bridgerton season came out.
Sure.
And it was very popular amongst our customer base. So we had, for a few months, we just had a Bridgerton themed tea, right? And it's just our normal products. With a little bit of extra accoutrement, just a little bit more experience. I think that's something where we do a little bit more experimentation. So less about like, okay, well, how do we change the food around, but how do we make the experience a little bit different? I think that's where our business is maybe a little bit unique, is because so much of the afternoon tea experience is the experience and the setting and all of that kind of stuff. It's not just like, okay, well, how do we change out the food to be more interesting? There's a lot more stuff we can play with. Usually.
And there must have been a paradigm shift at some point, to have 5 locations. You're obviously taking the tea rooms as a legitimate revenue source now, right? What you're working towards is you're working towards making sure that like these are sustainable, that they're profitable on their own. It's not just a place for experimentation. Now what it is it's an opportunity for you to grow the brand profitably. When did that paradigm shift take place? And how are you ensuring that that's the case? Because unit economics, on a tea house, what I would assume would be difficult.
Yes.
Is that, I mean, right? It's look, I mean, I sat across 3 tiers of dining myself. None were particularly pleasant, but
Yeah, I
a
think.
tea house, because a tea house is built around dwell time, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
thing, is you can't ask people to leave.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where like you have to kind of embrace a little bit that you are a special occasions type of business, right? I think we that's where the paradigm shift happened when we were like, okay, well, we can't operate like a restaurant, right? Because it's just like it's not a good experience to have or like having tables turn over all the time. You do want people to sit down and enjoy themselves and like take the time to enjoy tea. So that's why I think like the wholesale part of the business is so important, is because we're, these two things kind of feed off of each other. But when we look at the tea rooms, right, afternoon tea, we have a pretty good margins on afternoon tea. I think it's a good product to like. I honestly think it's like a really good product that most restaurants should look into, especially if you have something that you want to do over the weekends or like some sort of like special event thing that you want to do. Afternoon tea, I think, is a really unique experience that a lot of people want to enjoy. And, we've made our whole brand about it, but it's, very, very typical for people to like just one-off afternoon teas, like for Mother's Day, for example, is I think a perfect thing everybody with any restaurants should look into is doing some sort of like afternoon tea experience for Mother's Day. Now, scaling it was interesting when our parents opened the subsequent stores. We found that like because afternoon tea is very set, like we didn't have changing menus or anything like that, right? It came down to, well, how do we save money on just buying a ton of bread, right? Like, so if we have 5 stores, we're going through, or 4 stores, we're going through maybe it's like 200 loaves of bread a week. And we can do that because of that scale, because like these are things that can be essentially automated. We cook everything at one of our locations. Our store in Torrance has the biggest kitchen, so we cook all of our scones there. We make the chicken there. We make our like the eggs for our egg salad there. So all of that gets done in one location and then distributed to the rest of them. Same thing with like all the shopping gets done at the big location and then distributed to all of them. It's something that I think works right now because we're all like in the same locality. It'll be interesting when we look to expand out of the LA area or even California, what that looks like. But we're kind of excited to tackle that challenge as we move into this next stage of growth for the company.
Is that an ambition? I mean, it's you look at these two things. So you guys have 24 hours in a day. You've got 7 days in a week. You're human beings with, I'm assuming, lives outside of the business. You can only do so many things. You could do anything, right? But you can only do so many things. And for me, the wholesale side of your business just seems like it would scale infinitely with far less effort than building one of these in Portland, or, just saying. And so I ask you because, again, it's for me as a restaurateur, the only thing in the world that I wanted was just like a small little bar in Hollywood that I could call my own until I had it. And then all I wanted was another one. Then I wanted other tiers of dining, right? I wanted everything. I wanted growth for the sake of growth. Never really threading it to what did I want my life to look like, when all of this was said and done, which I think was a recipe for disaster for me personally. And so I would ask you, like, is the belief that you can grow both effectively, both verticals, the wholesale and the retail side of this business? How does the math, I guess, in your minds as it relates? Because not all opportunities are created equal, and you guys are incredibly diligent. You could make anything work. How do you decide what you want to do? What's an opportunity versus what's a distraction?
Well, I think that we've been, up until now, I think we've been really lucky with the opportunities that have just kind of fallen into our laps. So what you're asking is definitely something we've thought about. Like, how do we effectively grow both the wholesale and the restaurants? And they're essentially two different businesses, right? But that's sort of how we kind of operate now. When we entered the business right after our dad passed away, our knowledge is so ingrained in wholesale. And then growing up, we have the knowledge of the team. So we have a little bit, we've got experience backing us up in that way. But how we're going to do it, I'll let Brendan take that over.
Yeah. So I think, I go back to the flywheel, right? I believe that these two things are reliant on each other because of the business that we're in, because of the type of business that we're in as a restaurant. The benefit of having both of these things is like largely outweighs trying to do one over the other. Now, when we think about what growth for Chado looks like in terms of opening more locations, I think we're going to be a little bit cautious about how many locations we open. I think we want to be a little bit less like gung-ho about opening a lot of different locations. But when we do open locations, what we want them to be tied to is like this focus on community, but also increasing the brand profile, right? Like the reason we would open more Chado locations is so that our wholesale brand is more attractive to people, right? In the same way, like we want to expand our wholesale offering, not just from like loose leaf teas that we sell to coffee shops. We want to do corporate gifting. We want to do personal gifts, right? All of that will help both the in-store brand get a more foothold in its customer base, but the other way too, right? Is that if we create a place where people go to enjoy time with their friends, it connects the idea of like having enjoyment with your friends to our brand. And then if we allow you to engage in that enjoyment in multiple different ways, right? It's not just enjoying afternoon tea at Chado. It's, hey, you can buy gifts for your mother or for your daughter or for all of them just on our website without having to come into the stores, right? That's all part of it. And then on top of that, if you also see Chado gift boxes at your local coffee shop, right? It's just like all of these things feed into each other. So we don't necessarily need to have a Chado in every like major metropolitan area. I think it's just what are the places that we can open a Chado that will like really help us spin the narrative more and more into like this, be part of this community, because like it's just you feel warm like by the hospitality that tea brings you.
I want to end talking about like right butts and right seats. This is the hurdle for most of us. And I think that it's probably even harder in a family business. You two seem brilliant, but every family has idiots in it. Let's get real, And so when you're right, it's true. Oh my God. Like you don't want to fire that busser you hired right? You don't want to like fire that busser you hired 2 weeks ago. And like your cousin's over there sticking his grubby hands in the food. And so like, what do you do? But this business, right? It's the most complicated industry in the world, but it's the most simple business model there is, right? Great people doing things that they were born to do, right? That they are best in class at. It works across all businesses. And so in a family business, I look at it through two lenses. Like either one, you two were naturally predisposed for the seats that you have, which candidly is highly unlikely, or you've dedicated years to mastery, right? You've pursued your interest and your focus. And so rather than talking about how to effectively fire your cousin, which I think would be a far more entertaining conversation, what I want to end on is mastery. Like you two are best suited for the roles that you have. And that's by choice, not by birth. And so how do you educate yourself? How do you become more and more informed so that you're more comfortable in the seat that you sit in? And how has that process evolved over time?
You have to love what you do. You have to love it. You have to want to take an interest. And if you can do any job, but can you do that job well if you're not really interested or invested in it? No. And while we were kind of thrown into this, I will say I had to learn to love it. I did. Because it was just, I associated so much of it with just stress. And I've learned to love it. Now I want to know more. I want to keep myself constantly learning about tea, about the sustainability, about all the things that we want to drive into our brand. And I think in the last 5 years or so, Brendan and I have really honed in on trying to create that vision of what we want. And and so I really just come back to, you have to love it. You have to love what you do. You have to have some kind of enjoyment. Like, you have to find it, make it. It has to make you happy.
Yeah. I think ultimately, like as business owners, right, our businesses are like our most effective way to influence the world around us. And this is my personal perspective. That when I think of the things that we build, whether it's the wholesale business, whether it's Chado and the retail business, I'm looking at these things as, well, the most effective thing, or I want to accomplish big things in the world, whether it's sustainability, whether it's supply chain change, all of those things that I'm very interested in. To get there, we need to have successful businesses that are sustainable, one, but two, having a successful business that allows you the freedom to do the bigger things that you want to do. So we have to build systems that make Chado more sustainable to grow. I think that's an interesting challenge to solve because of the thing that it'll allow us to do. And for me, I think because of the position that we have in the tea industry, we're most effective in the tea industry, but I don't think that we're limited to it. And that's where I see Chado being the I guess like the golden goose in our situation, is that tea in Chado's setting is just a social lubricant, the same way alcohol has been in bars, right? I think if you view Chado as a place that like fosters relationships among people, then you can turn Chado into basically anything, right? Because as long as you build some place where people feel free to grow their relationships, then you can use those relationships to accomplish bigger things. And I think like that's for me where I see the value in the brand, but also like why and what it is that drives me to learn more and keep going.